Exciting times. You are here with James Ski, the founder and CEO of Sales Confidence. We are building the world's most valuable B2B sales community. And I'm really excited today to have our special guest, Phil Nayna, who is the founder of Absolute Mind Body and also head coach for the Sales Confidence membership. Good to have you here, Phil.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me. Super excited about this. It's been a while since we sat down and had a conversation like this. I think January we did a podcast on. We did an episode on my podcast. So yeah, interested to be in the other seat this time round. So yeah, excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Roles have reversed,
Sure.
And I'm going to have some fun interviewing you.
It's normally me asking the questions, isn't it?
I know, this is it. It's a good role reversal as a professional coach. And I'm looking forward to, going into details about your experience as a coach and also your perspective on coaching. Mm-hmm. In terms of like what we like to cover on this podcast, we want to get to understand you as an individual, understand your background, understand, your philosophy around how you approach what you do as a professional coach, talk about our partnership, what we're doing with Sales Confidence, which is really fun, and also just get your perspective on sales as a profession, because you have a background in sales. We know each other from LinkedIn, so we spent some of our career together overlapping, spending some fun days at LinkedIn, which we all know and love. So let's kick off straight away. The first kind of icebreaker question I like to ask is, what are you most excited about today?
Today specifically, or
specifically today, or generally, what comes to mind?
I'm excited about this conversation, but I'd say if I think about what's exciting me currently, I think I feel like there's an opportunity. There's a real opportunity for coaches, salespeople, anybody who is in a customer-facing role to really, two things really. I think one is to kind of leverage their brand. So kind of using platforms like LinkedIn. I know you were working on TikTok earlier this year. I'm not sure if you're still doing that, but for me, like kind of LinkedIn is the platform. So I think there's a real opportunity for salespeople to kind of leverage their brand on LinkedIn, and I think that's going to play a big part in success, particularly at the top of the funnel. So kind of SDRs and kind of people who are trying to kind of create volume in the sales funnel. And I think AI, which I'm just scratching the surface with at the moment, but I think AI is going to be huge, and I think the people that leverage it well will be the people that are super successful. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that as we go on today.
Definitely interesting how fast AI has become accessible. It's been talked about for years, but now you can actually apply it in your day-to-day job at any stage of your career, and it's definitely powerful. I've used it for ideation, generating ideas, research, and creating campaigns, and I think it's only going to get more valuable. So that's definitely something we can explore. Just thinking about your day-to-day and how you approach your day. What's the first thing you think of when you wake up in the mornings?
I mean, right now, I think I'm having this big push on social. So I'd say I am probably thinking about what I'm gonna post on LinkedIn, and I guess probably to make that more useful to your audience, I guess it's probably more what I'm thinking about is how is what I'm doing today or what I've done this week, how can I, what is my reflection on that, and how is that useful to the people that are following me on LinkedIn? And I think when you approach social or any kind of marketing like that, in fact, any kind of sales, I'd say if you think about it's the difference between selling and adding value. And I talk to my clients about this all the time. Like if you can switch that mindset from I'm trying to sell you something to how can I help you? I say I promise you, you'll have more conversations, you'll have more valuable conversations. Your customers will want to speak to you, and they'll probably want to buy from you as well. If they see you as an expert, if they see you as someone that can help them be better at their job, help them achieve the things that they want to achieve, they're taking your call and they're probably going to buy from you. But whilst we're trying to push what we do down their throat, some people, if they're in that kind of 3% of the market that is ready to buy and you've got them at the right time, they might buy. But everybody else, if you're not, I mean, how annoying is it to be someone to take a sales call when you're not ready to buy and someone just kind of listing features and benefits down the phone to you? It's just, no one's got time for that. And I think the skill or the skill is to understand, it's to understand, like I say, how you can, to kind of have the mindset of how can I help this person? How can I support them? How can I be of service? Because if you go in with that attitude, people will listen, and I think people are more likely to buy.
And is this a new routine for you, that you've started to create content that is value add in terms of what you're putting out there on LinkedIn?
The consistency is new, for sure. I've been kind of playing around with social for about sort of two years now, and I'm just starting to find my groove with it. And to be honest, really, it's just planning. I think if I try and do it every day, it doesn't happen because other things happen in a day. So really, it's about batching it. It's about planning. What do I want to say this week or this month, and then just making sure that you always. For me, at the moment, I'm like always 5 days ahead. But I'd like to get to a point where I'm like 30 days ahead and I know what's coming out 30 days in advance.
That's ambitious. I like it. Very cool. We're going to learn a bit more about, your expertise shortly, but just as an individual, to do what you do, where do you get your motivation and inspiration from?
Good question, first of all. I'd say, I mean, it's a mixture. So you've kind of got internal motivation, you've got external motivation, right? I'd say the external motivation is easy. Like I'm a small business. I'm growing a small business. It's easy to motivate myself in terms of that drive to succeed and make that work so that my business is successful. The internal motivation is, I guess it really kind of comes down to why I'm doing it all. Why do I do this? And this may be one of your questions coming up, but if I think about why I got into coaching, I got into coaching because I wish that I had somebody, I wish I'd had somebody by my side when I was in this role, helping me with all the things that I'm helping people with now.
Yeah.
So people helping with mindset, helping people really understand what they want, what's important, why they want it, and giving me the kind of tools and the frameworks to really succeed and to be the best that I can be. I always felt as a young salesperson, I had lots of potential, but I was always kind of scratching the surface of where I could take it. And I think just kind of having a coach, and like I said, I've had a coach now for 10 years. I think I will always have a coach. I don't think I'll ever not have a coach again, because I think having somebody that can really kind of push you, drive you, keep you accountable, and help you see things differently, help you take the blinkers off, is super important. So I guess to go back to your question, really it's about kind of like giving back. Like, so I want to be able to give back what I've received over the last 10 years. And I think that's kind of my biggest motivator.
I think, there's a lot that we share in that motivation to support the next generation of people that are coming through with better resources, better support. And obviously you come from a place of lived experience of being a professional salesperson, and you also have developed the coaching skills to allow you to help develop people, which is super powerful. I've benefited greatly, and I know many others that have had an interaction with you get a huge amount of value, and that's impactful. That's impacting other people, which is really powerful. So I like that. So how did you get into sales originally, though, before you ended up becoming a coach, what you're doing now? How did you end up choosing sales as a career to begin with?
So my first job out of university was, I was working for they were like an IT distributor in Marlow, which is not far. I mean, Marlow, you're from that neck of the woods. It's not far from where I grew up. And I mean, it was a telesales job, and I was just banging phones, booking meetings for the real sales guys. And there was two people in the office, two kind of main characters I remember in the office, and one of them was an ex-recruiter, and he used to tell these stories about like the money that he made when he was working in London and in recruitment. And I guess I kind of built a bit of a connection with him. And as somebody that didn't come from a lot of money, I was like, okay, this is interesting to me. So I kind of explored recruitment as a career. So recruitment was my first proper sales job. Worked in recruitment for 4 years before moving into tech, and then spent 10 years working in tech, SaaS technology.
Interesting. So do you, if you think about, because you had a successful sales career, there's probably skills that you learn at kind of each stage of that career. What do you think? What do you think it was about you that like made you successful at different stages of your sales career? How did you approach things? Like, what was your mindset?
I think in my early career it was just graft. I think I didn't really have. I think I had a natural ability to communicate. I think I was always a good communicator, and a good relationship builder, but I didn't really have the finesse early in my career. So I think a lot of my results came down to just graft, and a couple of managers taking a bit of a punt on me. I'd often find myself securing roles that were probably a little bit above my station. I was quite good at interviewing, so I'd often find myself in a role and think, okay, I'm a little bit out of my depth in that first 6 months. But I was fortunate enough to have in my early career a couple of really good managers that kind of took me under their wing, really supported me, and kind of smoothed out the rough edges, So yeah, I think in the early days, graft. I think as I've matured, and I guess if I was to kind of give myself some advice based on what I know now, I would say it's much more. I think the most successful people are successful when they start to develop more of an emotional intelligence, which is a big part of what I teach now. And really what I mean by that is creating an awareness of their thoughts, how they're feeling, how that's impacting their interactions, their behaviors, their results, and also being able to kind of see that in others, and also be able to, and we were talking about this just before we came on air, like, can you read the signs of how somebody else is feeling? Can you read the room? Can you understand what are the things that the person in front of you wants to hear about right now? Can you push the right buttons that are going to actually motivate them to make decision, to create a bit of urgency? Because if you don't have that emotional awareness, I think you'll be like many salespeople, and I definitely say I was guilty of this in parts of my career, of just being somebody that's always busy, always grafting, always on, but never really like excelling. You just busy being busy. And for me, once I understood that concept of it, like, the thought of just being some like idiot running around being busy, but not actually getting the results that you should be, that really, when I started to see that pattern in me, that's when I was like, right, okay, this emotional intelligence piece, or this, I guess it started off as mindfulness. It started off as kind of, can you be more mindful? Can you be more aware of how your thoughts and emotions are changing and impacting like how you behave? Because that's the skill. If you can cultivate that, I think the things that you can achieve are just 10x.
Amazing. So for those that might be early in their career, or anyone out there listening, as a coach, like, what is coaching? Like, what does that mean, and how do you help people?
Can I, before I answer that, can I put that question back to you?
Go on.
I think everybody has a different definition of coaching, and whenever I'm meeting a prospective new client for the first time, I always ask the question, what's your expectation of coaching? What do you see as coaching? What do you think coaching is? So I'm interested to hear your answer,
Sure.
and I'll fill in the gaps.
So for me, it's about creating a like safe, non-judgmental environment where you can share whatever's on your mind, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, your goals, and the coach can help you get clarity on what you're trying to achieve and where you're heading. So for me, the coach is asking questions and helping you uncover your own thought processes by the way that they, run the coaching session. That's how I think about a coach.
For sure. All of that is correct. I'd say fundamentally, coaching is helping somebody get from A to B. That's what a coach does. How a coach does that, like every coach will have different methods around how they do that. My methods are very much around helping people understand their psychology, helping people understand how their psychology is impacting them. So it kind of leans into a little bit of the emotional intelligence stuff that I was speaking about, but more generally, so how can I help somebody create an awareness of how, firstly, what they do is impacting their results. So raising awareness, raising responsibility. There's so many people will, when they begin a coaching journey, they'll be so used to justifying, making excuses for why they haven't achieved the things that they haven't achieved, why their life is the way their life is. And I think a big part of coaching is helping people to raise that responsibility of your actions are the reason why your life is the way it is. And in a nice way, like I say, in a nice way, we're all responsible. If you look at my life, your life, everybody's life, like it's a result of the decisions we've made and the behavior and the actions that we've taken. And I think really those kind of beginning parts of coaching is kind of really kind of helping people to see that. But then what's underneath those behaviors? What are the thoughts and the emotions and the perspectives and the beliefs that are fueling those behaviors? And that's a much more interesting part. That's the psychology part that we're talking about. How can you help people understand that what they believe about themselves, about other people, about the world, how is that impacting what they do? How is that impacting how they show up to their next client meeting? How is it impacting how they show up to their wife, their husband, their parents, their children, and really getting people to see that whatever they believe about themselves or the people around them, that will dictate what they do. And when you start to develop an awareness around that, your life is really different because you can catch yourself. You can catch yourself when you are having a belief that's not very empowering for you, or a belief that is capping you in some way. Like you must have heard it 100 times, right, with salespeople in the community. In fact, I hear this not every week, but regularly in sessions. It's impossible to hit target. It's not possible. There's no money in my territory, right? And any sales leaders that listen to this, they would have heard their reps say things along those lines before. And I always use this as an example because what do you think if I believe that there's no money in my territory, how do you think that impacts the actions I take? Do you think I take the same actions as the person that believes that they're going to smash target 150%? No, absolutely not. Like I'm not taking the same action, so I'm not going to get the same results. And I think when you develop enough awareness that you can see when it's your belief that is impacting what you do, that's really, really powerful. And when you can self assess that, that's great. But what a coach does as you're building that awareness is they hold up a mirror. They hold up a mirror and say, okay, was that true? Let's investigate that. Should we have a look at it?
I definitely, that holding up a mirror, I think, is a great analogy to look within yourself. Sometimes you get caught in your own mind with your own inner voice, and you don't get to reflect on easily with what's going on in your mind and what your thinking is. And I think absolutely, if I think about the coaching sessions I've had the benefit of spending time with you, it's kind of allowing me to express what's going on and help organize the pieces of the puzzle that are rattling around in my mind, and clarify and get clear on a route forward.
Yeah.
So that is super powerful.
Well, this is it. I think it's, I often use the term creating a thinking container, because I think that's exactly what it is. Like in a coaching session should be an environment where the person getting coached has the freedom and a license to really explore their thoughts, their thinking, their rationale, the mechanics of their mind, and do so in a really safe way where they're not getting judged. There's no other agenda other than how do we go from A to B. And I think most people don't get that ever in their life. Like if you think about a conversation, like, I mean, even this conversation here, right? Or any conversation, most of the time, the person on the other end of the conversation, if I'm talking, you're thinking about what you're going to say next. And when you're talking, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. In a coaching session, that's not what happens. In a coaching session, you're talking, and the biggest gift I can give you is the space to let your thoughts explore. So often there's times in a coaching session where I don't say something for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. I'm letting my client think more clearly. And the hardest thing as a coach is to stop yourself from butting in when somebody's thinking. Like it's really easy to go to try and finish their thought trail for them. And particularly if, for me, I coach salespeople a lot, so I see the same challenges, I see the same things that people are struggling with, but me jumping in and finishing their thought trail for them is not useful. I need to allow that person to finish where they're going with that thought, because 9 times out of 10, when I do that, they figure it out themselves. They don't need me to tell them what to do. They need the space and the time to, like you say, kind of move the pieces of the jigsaw around in a way that it now makes sense to them. And it's my job to create the space that allows them to do that. And where necessary, probe them, push them, challenge them as they go through that process.
What would you say from the experience that you've gained working directly with salespeople and sales leaders are like common challenges that you come across in those sessions, and how have you supported salespeople and sales leaders to navigate those challenges?
I mean, my experience has been, regardless of level, it's been a combination of kind of belief in themselves, a confidence, really. And I'm talking this from, I actually think often the more senior people have more challenges with imposter syndrome, with confidence, with the belief of what they're capable of. Because as they move into these more senior positions, the stakes get higher. Often they are, like I said, they have been either promoted or they've secured a position in a new company a little bit outside their comfort zone. And then being able to kind of deliver on, like a big part, certainly for leaders, I think that the big thing that people come to me with is like, I want to have the confidence to be able to deliver my vision with real clarity, real conviction. So a lot of it is about communication. But I think before the communication, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a couple of tangents. Before the communication is clarity. So it's going back to what we were saying at the very beginning, what you were saying when you were talking about coaching at the beginning. Like, if you want to communicate clearly, if you want to communicate with confidence, you need to have crystal clear clarity on what you believe and what you care about and what the vision is and why you're doing it. because if you don't have that kind of fundamental, no one's buying into it. No one's buying into your gibberish kind of like loose vision. People buy into authenticity. People buy into you when you're really talking about what you genuinely believe and what you care most deeply about. So I'd say it's that for leaders. For salespeople, like kind of like SDRs, individual contributors, I'd say it's also confidence, but it's probably a little bit harder to get to because often in those roles there's a kind of like a false confidence, which I think we've all kind of been through that. If you're been in sales for more than a handful of years, there are times where you kind of nearly it's not that you fake the confidence, but it can be a bit of a bravado in the first handful of years because you need to build that resilience. You need to be able to kind of like get on the phone, bounce back from the rejection. So there's a little bit of bravado around it. But what I see is when people start to really believe what they're capable of, believe in themselves, I think they view situations very differently, and they don't see rejection in the same way that they might have done when they had this kind of fake confidence.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting how, as salespeople's careers evolve and develop, how they need to overcome the different challenges that they're faced with and how that impacts their confidence. So I think that's very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about how you created Absolute Mind Body. Like, what was the inspiration for the name? And, what's been the purpose for you to build it in the way that you have so far?
So the name, I guess Absolute Mind Body is really about kind of optimization. So optimization of mind and body. So my original business, so the brand initially, when I set up Absolute Mind Body, when I left the corporate world and I set up the business, initially we were a wellness company. So essentially we would provide like wellness services to corporates. Over the last 3.5 years, we've converted we're now primarily a coaching company. And I guess the vision for the brand is to kind of create a new generation of leaders. So to have leaders, what I see as what I would see as success is to have a world where leaders lead with a coaching style. That's what I really want to see, because that's what I wanted to have when I was in an individual contributor. I would have loved if the leaders in the kind of latter stages of my sales career led with a coaching philosophy, and that's what I'm trying to create. And I think when I coach leaders now, we use the coaching tools that we use together. They repurpose those tools and they use them to coach their team. So one by one, I feel like I'm contributing to that. And that's the vision. The vision is that leaders, like more leaders, that it's normal that for leaders to, rather than run a dictatorship, to lead with a coaching philosophy, and for salespeople to have access to either external coaches like me or leaders that coach them, that get the best from them, rather than just give them a number and then leave them on their own to get to it.
Absolutely. And talk a little bit about our collaboration and our partnership, and your responsibility within the Sales Confidence membership. How are you adding value to that?
So partnership is, I say, you and I, we started talking last summer, was it? It was about a year ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And I think the original piece of work we've done together over the last 12 months is I've become the head coach on the Sales Confidence platform, which basically means to people listening in, I do regular masterclasses on a platform, but the main thing that I do is if you're a premium member, then you get a couple of 1 to 2 coaching sessions with me, depending on which package you've signed up with, and that's one-on-one. And then the bigger part that we're doing together, which is we've just been launching over the last few months, is the B2B. So kind of taking what we're doing with the membership and delivering that to organizations. So running coaching programs so there's two ways we do that. So we have coaching workshops, which I run, which are typically 90-minute or half-day events. And then we've got this 12-week coaching program where I take up to 10 people through a 12-week curriculum, which is really about helping people to master their inner game. So there's 3 phases to that. In the first phase, we look at how to refine focus. Middle phase, how to win the mental game. And then the final phase is building consistency. That's more about frameworks and tools and techniques.
Great. And I think, what people can get from this conversation, but also like how we're showing up on LinkedIn and in the world is, this deep shared philosophy around, helping salespeople and sales leaders and providing services that can really give them value and have an impact. And that's what you've talked about. You have an impact on, how leaders lead or how salespeople show up. And that's super aligned with what we care about, sales confidence. So that is very cool. Where have you found like resources to be useful to you? So is there a book that's impacted your career that you found super valuable?
I mean, there's many books. You just want one?
Just one.
Just one. Can I give you 2?
You can give me 2.
I would say, one that has influenced me the most, one of the books that's influenced me the most, I'd say, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right. Stephen Covey. Yeah. I actually believe this to be true, is that most self-development books are a take on Stephen Covey's work. I think he is the OG of self-development. The book's 30 years old, and I'm as somebody that's read over 100 self-development books, everyone's stealing stuff from Stephen Covey. That is it. If you're going to read one, read that one, because it's got everything in it. I like Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think it's really really relevant for salespeople, because I think it's really about kind of creating habits, obviously, as the name would suggest, but really what he's talking about and the way he approaches how to build habits, he talks about it about building identity. So building an identity around the person that you want to be, which is a bit about the same around the belief. It's essentially similar to what I'm teaching. If you believe you're a successful salesperson, or if you believe you're a hard worker, you're the biggest motivator of humans. The biggest biggest driver of human behavior is the desire to act in line with your identity. So if you can create an identity that is useful to you, and then you strive to behave like that every day, that's the thing that will kind of drive consistency in your behavior. And obviously James Clear in the books, he gives lots of tactics and tools around how to develop that. But I would say those 2. But I would, like I say, and again, I don't want to kind of like ruin your question by adding a 3rd one.
You're going to list all your whole library now.
No, but what I would say is, as salespeople, commercial people that are driven, we often want to do all this kind of like self-development, learn, more. And one of the biggest lessons I've had as I've gone through my own journey is to pause and to slow down. And when we pause and when we slow down, we access an intuition that we don't normally have access to when we're running around just being busy. So my recommendation to anybody listening to this is don't obviously read the self-development books, read the, like, understand the kind of the tools and the frameworks and the techniques that you can use to be better, but spend some time investing in like some kind of practice that allows you to slow down. So whether that's, for me, that's been like more of a spiritual practice, a lot of meditations, a lot of breath work. I go to sound baths, gong baths, that type of stuff. And if you would have said that to me 10 years ago, I mean, I would have laughed. I would have laughed in your face if you would have said, this will really help you with your career. But I can't. I think that having some kind of practice which helps you slow down and connect to what's real, because I think what most of us do is we spend so much time in our heads thinking, strategizing, worrying, being anxious, and creating some space to slow down and connect to what's really important is the most powerful thing you can do, not just for your work, but also for your relationships, for your health, and just for a happier, more enjoyable life. So,
well, that's great advice. No, I'm glad you hijacked that question, because for me, I think there's this perception that books have all the answers. One, there's no value if you don't implement what you read, and that's often the case. Yeah. But what you've highlighted is the practicalities of actually taking responsibility for how you show up and how you control yourself. And for me, without a doubt, in recent years, especially with my kind of bipolar diagnosis, having to slow down and reflect and actually pace myself so that success is sustainable. I think there's a rush to be successful. There's a rush to get more, do more. And so learning to sustain it, life, touch wood, is long these days. And so you need to live a sustainable life. So I think that's great advice.
Just to add to that, just before we move on, I think I agree on the sustainability piece, but also I think you make better decisions when you slow down. Like, I think if you're always at 100 miles an hour, like, essentially all that happens is you repeat your patterns. Your brain is smart, right? Your brain is clever and efficient with energy. So your brain automates pretty much most of your thoughts, most of your behaviors, most of your activity. So if you don't stop and pause, you are living a conditioned life. You're essentially just repeating your past. And fair enough, if your past was great and you just want to continue doing exactly what you're doing, then fine. But if you want to change if you kind of want your future path to be different to your current path, you need to stop and you need to slow down and you need to understand what are the patterns that are leading me in this direction that I'm always going in, because everything is a pattern, and until we interrupt the pattern, we will move in the same direction.
Totally agree. With your experience of having your own sales career, interacting with hundreds of salespeople, all the value that you're adding to the sales confidence membership members, salespeople, sales leaders, what traits or attributes do you see that the really successful salespeople demonstrate?
Great question. What traits do I see that the most successful salespeople have? I'd say they have an ability to articulate their thoughts in a clear and coherent manner. They don't waste words. They say what they mean. They're not scared to not offend is the wrong word, but like, they're not scared to say what's difficult. They're not scared to have a difficult conversation. I would say that they are heavily processed. So they understand, they have a process where they reflect on what works and what doesn't work, and they create a process that is repeatable. They create frameworks. And I'm talking probably, well, I'm for actually leaders and individual contributors. They have frameworks that they know if I do X, I get Y. You know, they create systems, they create a machine. And I think that they have, I'd say finally, I'd say they have like a curiosity that means that they love feedback. They love feedback and they want to grow. There's no finished article. There's no I know it all. There's a curiosity to keep learning, to keep growing, to be better every day. And there's consistency. I'd say it's the final piece.
Totally agree. So naturally, sales confidence, a large component about what we support people with is confidence. And how have you developed your own confidence as a coach or as an individual?
Practice. I'd say, I guess probably like most salespeople, I've been good at creating opportunities for myself in my sales career, but also as I've run my own business, I've always been good at creating opportunities, and sometimes I create opportunities that are a bit bigger than what I'm ready for. But what I've learned is throwing yourself in the deep end, and just figuring it out. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to grow. And as you grow, you build confidence. And I mean, a great example is when I started my podcast, I was really nervous interviewing people initially, but I just knew that if I just recorded 5 podcasts, I would be good, or I'd be good enough. I'd be better than average. And I think sometimes it's repetition. It's put yourself in difficult situations. Put yourself in situations that are outside your comfort zone, and repetition. When you do those, I think you do those 2 things. I think you build confidence.
I think that's what I often say is like, once you show competence in something because you practiced, then that gives you confidence for you to continue and to develop. And also, I think also before you have competence, you do have to have self-belief that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And you have to back yourself.
Well, I'm glad that we had that little moment where we both tried to say things at the same time, because belief was the next bit I was going to say. And what I mean by that is like when I remember when I first started doing public speaking gigs, and again, I would get so nervous on the build up, and I had to stand up in front of 50 people, 100 people. I'd get so nervous. And one of the things that one of my coaches taught me was to ask yourself 2 questions. What is the belief that is making me feel this way? Figure that out. What do I believe about myself or about this situation that's making me feel the way I feel? Is that true? And then what is the belief that I need to be able to attack this situation in the best possible way? And I think it always distills down to that, because if you're feeling nervous or anxious because of something that you believe, either about yourself, about the person you're sat opposite, the room that you're in, the situation, you've got a belief about what that, so you've created a story around that, which is making you feel anxious. And if you can figure out what that story is and question its validity, first of all, most of the time it's untrue. Most of the time it's just not true. And if it is true, maybe you're in the wrong room, So figure out what the belief is. Is it true? Hopefully it's not, because if it's not, then you can ask yourself, okay, well, what is the belief that I need? What is the belief I need to have now to show up to this in the way that I want to show up?
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach. We're coming up to some final questions. Naturally, it's in your brand. absolute mind and body. How do you look after your body, your well-being, and your health? What practices do you take responsibility for in your own life?
So I've always been somebody that's exercised. That's been part of my life since I was a teenager. But I'd say, in terms of like a morning practice, I get up early, I meditate every day, I have cold showers every day. If I have a bit more time, I will do like a full breathwork session, which is a bit more of an extended meditation. I plan. I have like a journal. I have a whiteboard. I try and be as intentional as I can with what I'm doing in any given day. And I'd say, what else would I say? And I'd say I reflect. I reflect a lot, I would say, is probably the other thing. So trying to find time in every day. And I wouldn't say I do this every single day, but most days I will find some time to reflect on what went well and what didn't. Because I think, in the same way that we were talking about before, it's easy just to repeat the same patterns over and over again. And I think kind of having that some kind of reflective routine is super important. But just something that might be useful for your audience, which if any of people listening to this have come to any of my workshops, you would have probably heard me talk about this. But one of the things that's really helped me look after my mindset, my wellness, but also performance, is using short transition meditations in between activities, in between tasks, in between calls or meetings. And really all that is it's a 2-minute meditation where you sit, eyes closed, breathing slowly, clearing. Basically the use case is, or what you're doing whilst your eyes are closed, while you're breathing slowly, is just clearing your mind of all the chaos, of all the noise that has been running around in there from whatever activity you've just done before, the call you've been on, the meeting you've been on, and refocusing your attention on what you've got next. And for me, I found that is the tool that has been most useful to me to develop a more intentional way of living, and a more intentional way of showing up. So yeah, I would add that in.
That's great. It's been fascinating to hear, the broadness of your experience, and also the tools that you apply to your own life. You practice what you preach. And I also think the frameworks, some that you've shared today, are what people can take advantage of in spending time with you. So I think if anyone's listening this and they're excited about what Phil's got to say, I think they should just be reaching out to you. Are there any final thoughts or something that you would want to impart on the audience as a final takeaway for those listeners that got to the end of the conversation?
So if I was to leave one final piece, I would say, I don't think we've touched on this today, but I'd say whatever you're doing, figure out why you're doing it. Find I call it the goal behind the goal. So what is the intrinsic motivation? What is the thing that's fueling your desire for X? For whatever it is you think you want, why do you want it? And ask yourself that question a few times. So you gotta go deeper and deeper. Well, why do you want it? Well, why do you want that? What does that get you? How do I feel if I have that? Really understand your why, because if you understand your why, motivation and confidence, you don't need to worry about them anymore.
Great takeaway. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to interview you, Phil, today on the Sales Confidence Podcast. This is available on all channels, and I'm looking forward to more of the opportunities that we can create for people in the industry. So thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, buddy.
Good job.
Cheers, buddy.